I'm sitting here reading it, and the reason why I got it, because I wanted to see, was it what I thought it was? Was slavery of the body or was slavery of the mind? In reading it, he never talked about, you got to make sure you grapple them and hold them tight. And every time there was something physical, it was for the psychological warfare and the slight psychological entrapment that it caused on somebody. So this is where I try to tell people, if you can control your mind and you can control your thoughts, you'll always be free. That's what freedom is. When I can control how I perceive life, that's what freedom is.
When you can control what you perceive of life, that's what freedom is. I like
Because
that.
yeah, perception is really, perception determines how you experience something, and then how you experience it is what you call reality. So your reality is literally directly tied to how you perceive life. And we all have the ability to
I found you on TikTok. You're under DG Mindset on TikTok. And excuse me if I'm not like,
No, you're good. Yeah.
the monitor's right here with the cameras right
I
here.
figured, yeah, I figured that.
um, but yeah, I just wanted to, let people know where I found you. I don't know a whole lot about you, and why don't you just let everyone know who you are, kind of your story. Let's just start there.
Yeah, so we'll start here. My background is really in sports and basketball. I start from the close to the end and work my way back. But I played 8 years for the Harlem Globetrotters. Got done with
Okay.
that. I got done with that back in 2014, and I just naturally wanted to stay around the game of basketball, be home a little more. So I started my own company where I would train kids all the way up to professionals and teach them basketball. About 2018, business partner of mine, we got involved, decided to move down to Florida, moved down to Naples, Florida, with plans of creating basically a basketball facility to help grow what I was doing and kind of what he was doing. And before I knew it, everything went to hell in a handbasket. Now here I am.
Mm,
This guy's stolen everything from us. I mean, stole money,
really?
cars, our credit's purposely ruined by him. So now we're stranded essentially down here in Florida with nothing, with no means of getting back to Indiana. And we finally made it back. We moved it literally. My father-in-law came down on a Friday. Me and him packed up the house on Saturday. Sunday we drove back a U-Haul Monday, and got back in June of 2019. I just went on this mission to try to figure out who I was and where I was and why I was. And in the process of that, I get a knock on the door, and it's the FBI. And the FBI says, "Hey, we know the guy who you were involved with. We've been chasing him for a while. We want you to help us." And I'm just like, I'm a hooper. Like, how did I even get to this point? Like, here I am now going around
Yeah.
with 2 cell phones. I got a fake email address. I'm essentially a confidential informant for the FBI. I'm like, how did this even happen? And I never forget, I was at the lowest of my low, man. I was low, like no money. My wife at the time was a stay-at-home mom. She had to go back to work, and here I am now at home, and I'm like, I'm lost, dude. I used to wake up every morning just crying, like wondering, like, this can't be life. Like, if this is life, I can't do this anymore. And through that, I ended up having a shift in my perspective, and that's the only thing that changed. And this is what kind of pulled me up at least enough to get on my knees to say, like, okay, I can get up and figure this out. And I just went on this hunt, and then COVID happened. I went on a hunt to figure out how this thing called the mind works. What is it?
Mhm.
And I always tell people this is when I kind of woke up. My spirit woke up, and this is when everything just started coming to me. And then, that's kind of put me on my path. I know why I'm here. I know what I'm here to do. And that's really when it started. And I look back, as a kid, my mom was always teaching me and telling me these things. She was always dropping wisdom and dimes on me. And she was planting a bunch of seeds, but it wasn't time for them to grow until the storm came. When the storm came, that's when everything started to grow. And so here I am now.
Awesome, man. That sounds like quite an experience to have everything, stolen and taken from you. I'm sure there was a wave of emotions that, resulted from all that. Um, I have a little brother. I have four younger brothers. They all hoop. There's a couple things in your story that piqued my interest. One of them, being the sports side, and then obviously you said, you had a awaken, and I see that poster in the background of yours. Um, so just a couple talking points there, but let's talk about athletes. I didn't play. I played high school football, and that's as far as I went. Didn't go anything beyond that. Um, and I hear a lot, when you do get to the next level and even pro level, a lot of it is mindset. You know what I mean? A lot of it is mindset because they already have the skills, correct?
Right.
A lot
Yeah.
of it is the mindset. What would you tell younger athletes, as they prepare, even as freshmen in high school, as they kind of go on that journey, that 4-year journey in high school, and then as they get ready to kind of take that leap to the next level, what can you tell them, those young kids who are in high school, who have dreams of maybe, playing college ball or and even going pro? What can they do to, I don't know if you could prepare for it, but what are some things that they can start doing to, I guess, get them ready for that moment?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. So I have a 9-year-old son who's playing basketball now. And the first thing I do with him, I ask him, "What do you want to do?" He's like, "Well, I want to play in the NBA." I said, "Okay. Well, if you want to play in the NBA, you will stand no chance of playing in the NBA if you don't believe that you can play in the NBA."
Mhm.
So this is the first thing I do with children. I tell kids, "You're going to be whatever you think you are. Period. Whatever you think you are, that's what you'll be." But the problem is what we think we are is basically what somebody has taught us to think we could be.
Mm,
So I always say with kids or young athletes, you got to use your imagination. You got to think big. You got to dream big. You got to realize that there's no boundaries to what you can be. The biggest hurdle though is you getting out of your own way and seeing yourself as being that even when it doesn't look like you can be that. So this is where the power of the mind and understanding the 6 faculties of the mind, and understand, imagination and willpower and perception and how all of these things work together. But I tell kids all the time, like, you're going to be whatever you are, whatever you think you are, and like, why not think you can be something amazing? So your mindset is everything. I tell people all the time, like, mindset is literally what separates one man from another, especially when you get to the professional level. The only difference between the guy who's a Hall of Famer and the guy who's sitting at the end of the bench was their mindset. Period.
hmm Mindset. So these kids, whoever's listening, mindset is one of the major factors that, is kind of that almost that X factor that kind of, separates um, those who are serious and those who aren't, right?
That's it. That's it.
That's
And
it.
your mindset is, think of it like your mindset is your thermostat, like in a house. Right? We have
hmm
mindset, you have thermostat. Thermostat, you put it on a temperature and it holds that temperature. Well, if say if I put it on 75 and I have the air conditioner running, well, when it gets to 76, the air conditioner is going to cut on. Your mindset is basically the temperature at which your thoughts and your emotions are. So if I'm a pretty positive person, that's going to kick in when things get hard, right? That's what's going to lift me back up. So
hmm
your mindset is everything. That's why the ancients, they knew this. They knew that mind was all. This universe is mental. I tell
Yeah,
people all the time, like, forget about this physical reality. I don't even like. I'm over here trying to figure out the mind, because if I can figure out the mind, I figured out everything else.
absolutely. I'm with you right there. I think you have a shirt that says life is mental. I
Yeah,
love that. I love that because it is everything that we do starts in thought form. You know what I mean?
that's it.
Um, even you know books like the Bible talks about, when God spoke, God spoke it. He spoke it into existence. I love that. Um, Mindset is very important. I agree with that. What are some things that maybe even as parents you can help um, instill into your kids that'll help them with that mindset aspect?
Yeah, I never tell your kids they can't do something. Never,
Mhm.
never, because a child, because of the way the ego works, the ego makes you think that you're unworthy. Like, I
Mhm.
need to have money and then I'll be enough, or I need to have
Mhm.
this house, or I need him to love me or her to love me, then I'll be enough. The key was teaching your children how to love themselves, how to see them, how to establish their own self-worth, and it wasn't contingent on something outside of themselves. So as parents, it's our job to instill and teach our children how to establish their self-worth, so it's not contingent on something outside of them. So now when I know I'm enough, I won't settle for anything less than the standard that I have. So this is where I know as a parent, it's changed me drastically, where I'm constantly encouraging my kids. I'm constantly telling them there's ways I can tell them not to do something by encouraging them to do something else. You know what I mean? So instead of me, like, that's why one of the things I talk about, the 10 Commandments, the 10 Commandments were telling you, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. Well, why don't you tell me instead what I should do? Right? So this is what I try to do with my children, is to try and encourage them, because I realized at 30, I'm 39 now, but like around 36 or 37, the voice that was playing in my head really wasn't my head. It was my parents' voice. Of what they had instilled in me. Here I am, 36, 37 years old, and I'm living with the programs that they put on me. So as parents, realize that everything that you say, everything that you do, you're teaching your children how to do this for themselves. You know, eventually they're going to get to a point where they'll have to perceive life and think they're on their own. But it matters, especially when they're little. It definitely matters.
Did you always know that, or did you have to learn that?
No, I didn't. I got to a place of like feeling like stuck. And I've always had a high degree of self-awareness, and I've always been inquisitive, meaning I want, like, someone tells me the sky is blue, I want to know why the sky is blue. Like, I don't just say, oh, okay. My mom was always, she was in education. She's always told me, like, you always look to seek to find the answer, find your truth. So I think having that ability to reflect and contemplate more on a level that most people aren't at, I started to realize, wow, like, you worry about how many likes you get on a social media post, but it's really not the social media post. It's because you wanted the approval of your parents growing up, and now this is what's taking the place of it. These strangers who are quote unquote liking your post.
That's huge.
So yeah, so I just started, and this was me. I would go sit out in the woods by myself for like 2 hours, and I just sit out in the woods by myself and just sit here with a note. I didn't realize I was doing shadow work. I was journaling, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was just write down, why do I struggle? Why do I worry about what people see? What people think about what I wear? Why do I? And I just would ask these questions and just keep asking why. And I saw it always came back to when I was a child, always.
That's huge. I did something similar to that. I journal now, but I also remember when I got to a point where I too had my, spiritual awakening, and I kept asking myself why, like why, and I think they call it, I don't know where it comes from, but they call it like the why ladder.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember doing that, and I was like, it felt it sounds weird to even just say it like this, but it's just like something snapped, and like it's almost like the universe kicked into gear, like this different, almost like view of life, and it started me on that journey too, where I just wanted to keep learning about the mind, learning kind of like yourself, where I just wanted to do everything that I could in my power to make sure I'm taking care of my mind, my health, and because I knew, like, if we don't take care of our mind, like, if once that goes, then you're done. You know what I mean? That's awesome.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say? Something?
No, I was just gonna say that people don't realize, like, I've been really studying like ancient cultures. I've been studying slavery, right? When people understand that slavery existed in the United States, it had less to do with the actual physical bondage of being chained and shackled. And 98% of it was the psychological toll that it took on the enslaved, on the captive. So I started reading a book called the Willy Lynch letter. And basically it's the Willy Lynch letter, the making of a slave. And it's 33 pages of this guy, Willy Lynch, who basically, this is where we get the term lynching from. He basically came up from the West Indies, came up to Jamestown, and taught slave owners how to run a profitable slave trade business. I'm sitting here reading it, and the reason why I got it, because I wanted to see, was it what I thought it was? Was slavery of the body, or was slavery of the mind? In reading it, he never talked about, you got to make sure you grapple them and hold them tight. And every time there was something physical, it was for the psychological warfare and the slight psychological entrapment that it caused on somebody. So this is where I try to tell people, if you can control your mind and you can control your thoughts, you'll always be free. That's what freedom is. When I can control how I perceive life, that's what freedom is.
When you can control what you perceive of life, that's what freedom is. I like
Because
that.
yeah, perception is really, perception determines how you experience something, and then how you experience it is what you call reality. So your reality is literally directly tied to how you perceive life. And we all have the ability to perceive life however we want.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything, I think the universe is very, um, when it comes to humanity, I think we all have obviously subjective experiences, you know what I mean? And I think that's important because, and this is why I'm doing a podcast, to really um, just show people that, hey, we're all different, but we're also alike at the same time. And so um, let's talk about the ways that you were able to strengthen your mindset. Like, what did you do? Did you just start reading books? Did you like? I know you're an athlete. You played for the Harlem Globetrotters, um, and so physical activity for you is probably something that helped as well.
Sure.
What were some of the things that you did?
Yeah. So, I've always obviously worked out being an athlete, so that
Mhm.
strengthens the willpower muscle of the mind. So I never had a problem with that. But when Kobe Bryant died, I really, one day I was on Google. I was like, what were Kobe Bryant's favorite books? And I found his
Mhm.
14 favorite books, and I just started reading them. A lot of them were psychology books. And I went to college and got my master's in organizational management, which is the psychology of managing people. So I've always been fascinated with the mind and how it works and everything. And then when I started reading a lot of these books, and a lot of them were psychology books, I was like, oh wait. And then that was in January of 2020, and I probably started my awakening consciously in March of 2020. And that's when I just went straight down the rabbit hole. And so
Mhm.
I read a lot. I read a lot. I meditate a lot. Um, I take time for stillness. I always take minimum 4 to 5 hours a week of just intentional learning time, meaning I'm watching something, I'm reading something, like I'm doing something to try and expand my consciousness. I spend more time working on my mindset than I do probably like working on my body, because I realize that the mind is all. So um, something that's been really revolutionary for me, not so much anymore, but really like meditation has really helped me to strengthen my awareness, which then, everything just flows after that.
Yeah, that's meditation is a very. I like to know the science behind it because last year, even during the heat of the pandemic, when I think my awakening just went to just a whole different level. I meditated a lot, but I was off and on, and I noticed when I did meditate, it felt like I was in sync. You know what I mean? Like I felt like everything was just flowing, and it felt like even when things didn't go the way I wanted to, I still felt like I was okay. You know what I mean? Like I didn't, you know, internally freak out, or I didn't have my stress levels rise. I just kind of stayed even keel. Like,
Yeah.
like it's a weird phenomenon. Um, do you meditate like consistently, like every single day?
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing, I get up at 5 every morning, but I don't get out of bed until 6.
Okay.
So like I'm going to meditate from 5 until 6 o'clock. So when I start my day, I'm already aligned. I'm in the right state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Someday, like tomorrow, I got to catch a flight at 5 a.m. So obviously I won't do it in the morning, but I
Mm-hmm.
will at some point if I need to. Now, because here's what the ego will hijack it. Now here you are. Now you need this practice. I need to meditate, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what was happening with me. But now I meditate usually 6 days a week, and if I don't, sorry, my dog is barking. If
It's
I
all
don't,
good.
it's just because like my schedule didn't allow me to. But I'll find a way to have some point of stillness throughout my day.
I like that. Yeah. And you said you'll meditate right when you wake up. So like, are you taking like an hour to meditate?
Yeah, yeah. So like this morning, I did 22 minutes of like a guided, and then I did an 11-minute of just gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll do that. So today was 33 minutes. Sometimes I just sit there and I just stare at the ceiling and just try to focus on not thinking or focus on, my heart center. But yeah, I mean, it differs from day to day. So, as you know, some days when you meditate, you can do it. And then some days it feels like a struggle.
Yeah, yeah, and that's interesting in itself too. Yeah, meditation is huge. I think it's one of those life hacks that I think if people really apply that every single day, I think
Uh,
they set themselves up for success.
this world would look
Right.
completely different people. I mean, you said something really, it just popped in my head. It's like we're the only creature that has the ability to contemplate and reflect. And when you can contemplate and reflect, you'll get rid of everything else and you'll see that you actually were the universe, that you are everything and everything is you. So I feel like
Hmm.
this is like nature's way of allowing us for us to remember because we forgot because of our ego.
Yeah, that's super interesting because I think about that a lot. Like I tell people this all the time. We are literally the only things on this planet that can speak, that can think, that can use these things and create. You know what I mean? Um, and then at the same time, we're super, super fragile. You know what I mean? We can't be jumping off of
Right.
cliffs and stuff, and we can't step in front of trains. Like, it's a super unique thing about us, but and it's just super strange. I don't know. I think about that all the time. How we're the only creature on this planet that can do that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you said something too where you said we are the universe. And I know when people hear that, they may not always, but like it does come off woo woo, you know what I mean? Like just kind of out there. Um, but I agree with you when you said that. Are you able to explain kind of that statement right there where you said we are the universe? Like what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think how to say this. So if we can go look at it from the scientific background, which is the physical plane, because we operate on three planes of existence: the spiritual, mental, and the physical plane, spirit, mind, and body. So if we look at it from a purely physical plane, scientifically, we can go back to the Big Bang. When they say 14.6 billion years ago, the universe actually started in a singular moment.
Hmm.
At that moment, everything that we see in this observable universe was at the size of a pea. So everything, and it's just been constantly expanding. And so it's almost like, uh, when you get a rock and you throw it in the water and the waves splash out. Well, it's just been splashing out for the last 14 billion years. So if we were to reverse it, everything that's inside of this universe would all go back into the size of that singular moment. So what people,
Hmm.
this is, I mean, science has proven that we literally are made up of the same components as stardust. So that's on the physical side of it. But then even on the spiritual side, when you understand the nature of consciousness, because that's all we are, religious people call it spirit, we call it essence, being, whatever you want to refer to it as.
Hmm.
This is what created and creates everything. We are an individualized version of this universal thing.
Hmm.
So that thing, which created everything, had to have existed outside of space and time. And this is what the
Hmm.
egoic, linear, logical thinking mind of human beings cannot grasp. It cannot grasp to think that, wait, something has always been forever? How? Because it has to be a start and an end. But when people understand that we're called human beings, meaning human was the physical animal side of you and being was the spiritual infinite side of you, the being has always existed and always will exist, and it exists outside of space and time. In my theory, this is what intuition is. When you just know something without knowing it, it's because the part of you, the real you that exists outside of space and time, so therefore every scenario already exists.
Yeah.
It's you're picking up knowledge that is already out there. So it's real. And plus, you have psychedelic experiences.
Hmm.
You know what I'm talking about. You are literally like I've had conversations with it, and I knew that it was me, and I was it. It's the you can't even I can't even articulate. I can't. I mean,
I
yeah,
hear you. I hear you. Yeah, that's one thing too about psychedelics. Like, it does allow, and like on my last podcast, I was talking to this girl. we were talking about psychedelics and how it does kind of open up this, I don't even know if it's existing neural pathways, but yeah, it literally kind of goes along what you were saying. Like it's like deja vu, you know what I mean? Like deja
Yeah.
vu is so unexplainable. Like it's almost like you experience what happened already, you know what I mean? It's a weird feeling, and it's like when it happens, you're like, oh my gosh, like what was that kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, go for it.
No, I spent about 2 hours yesterday. Really, like, this is the way I tell my wife. Like, this is the way my mind works. I'm sitting here thinking, like, okay, at this moment, the Big Bang, this is what happened. Then there's this singular moment of just energy exploded and everything. I'm thinking, okay, consciousness. So my mind is just racing, right? And I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm like, why though? Why would consciousness? Why would it create for what? But then it was like, oh wait, it isn't just this. When we get into the multiverse and that how this is a holographic fractalized universe, this is just one of many of many of many of many. So my theory, I was like, oh man, so your consciousness is non-local, meaning it could go from here to there to where. We know that through astral projection. What if deja vu was really just your consciousness shifting to another universe that this same,
Ooh.
you see what I'm saying? Like this
Mhm.
is now, can science prove that? No, not yet. But when you, like I said, when you understand the nature of consciousness and how everything works, like, okay, this might be something here. So, yeah.
That reminds me of, I think you posted something on TikTok about the two books, or maybe it was your Instagram, about the two books you were reading by David Hawkins, Power
Oh, yeah,
versus
yeah.
Force and Letting
Yep.
Go. And in that book, I just got done reading Power versus Force, really great book, by the way. Um, it talks about how, I'm gonna butcher it, but it's something along the lines of, if we have a question about something, then that means something along the lines of there has to be an answer for it. You know what I mean? And you were
Dude,
saying how, have you read it through yet or no?
I'm about 200 pages in. Yeah.
Okay. So you're like halfway through. Yeah, it's
Yep.
a really great read. And when I came across that, that statement there, I was like, dang, that really does make sense. It's almost like saying, like, how can you know, um like how can you say like God doesn't exist, when the question of does God exist kind of uh validates kind of the existence of God already, you know what I mean? Or universe.
Right.
I think it's all the
Right.
same thing.
So,
um
yeah.
yeah, that's super interesting.
It's interesting you say that because it's like when you think about it, it was like you have to see, this is what happens. People don't understand. They think that like this body is them.
Hmm.
Most people are walking around, they don't even understand, like, you're not your body, you're not your mind. So like, especially when I have like conversations around death and everything, it's like there is no such thing as death. Your body stops working, absolutely, but you're not your body. That's not what you are. And really getting someone to understand that, it's challenging. But you saying, like, being able to ask the question, this is the law of polarity, right? For a problem to exist, a solution has to exist as
Yeah.
well. It's the same energy. And so like now when I have problems, I realize I got this answer from a meditation that like the only difference between the problem and the solution is the vibration. One is
Mm.
resonating at a higher frequency. So for me to find the solution, I have to have myself in a higher state of consciousness, a higher vibration. So instead of getting upset or mad because I have a problem, I take a step back and I try to elevate my emotions and elevate my vibration, because now I can put my consciousness at that point of information that what we would call a solution.
Yeah, I think Einstein has a quote that says, you can't solve a problem with the same kind of thinking that brought it about.
Exactly.
Have you heard that one?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something
No.
like
Yeah.
something like
Yep.
that.
Yeah. No, that's it. Yeah.
You had mentioned the law of polarity, and I think on your TikTok you had a series talking about I think that comes from the Kybalion book that you had read, right?
Yep.
Is
Yep.
that where that comes from, the laws or
Hermetic, the Hermetic laws. Yeah.
What can you talk about that? Because that's a book that I also would like to read.
Sure.
What did you get from that book?
So the Hermetic, it's called the Seven Hermetic Principles, and basically it was developed by the Egyptians, and then the Greek, when they conquered Egypt, they kind of took it on. You had Thoth, and then you had Hermes Trismegistus, who kind of took it over. But it was these seven principles that govern this whole entire universe, no matter where you are, what you are. And it's these seven principles, and the way they work, they flow into each other. So meaning if you understand number one, that will segue into you to number two. And if you understand number two, then you can go to number three. And then when you get down to seven, if you understand number seven, you would have had to have understood and been living by the six that came before it. So like the first one is the law of mentalism, meaning everything is mind. Everything is thought. Everything in this universe first starts with thought, which then moves into the law of correspondence, which means as above, so below. Because we live in a fractalized universe, meaning the macro is made up of the micro. Whatever it is on the macro level, it's going to be the same thing on a smaller version on the micro level. So when you understand, like, my mind, the mental plane comes before the physical plane, as above, so below. For me to change my physical life, all I had to do was change my thoughts, which then flows into the law of vibration, which basically says that everything is just constantly vibrating, and so therefore it's constantly changing. This has helped me drastically in life of not holding on to things, living life in a state of detachment by understanding that this is like everything's going to change. It's never going to stay the same, which then flows into the law of polarity, which basically says everything is connected. They're just varying by different degrees of vibration. Hot and cold are the same thing. They're just different vibrations. The law of rhythm, meaning however far the pendulum swings to the right, it's got to swing just as far to the left, showing that there's balance in this universe, which then flows into my favorite, the law of cause and effect, that there is a cause that has an effect, and then that effect becomes the cause of a new effect. And this is the way the universe operates. So there's no such thing as a coincidence. Things that we say are coincidental, it's because we don't know the causes of everything. So what's helped me in life, what's helped me in business and relationships, is living by the law of cause and effect, and understanding that the cause of everything will first be a thought. It will always start with a thought. So if I can control the thought, I'm controlling the causes of the effect. And then the last one is the law of gender, that basically just says that everything has a masculine and feminine property to it. And for there to be harmonious balance, there have to be equal parts of masculine, equal parts of feminine. So those laws, I mean, they flow into the 12. They're also part of the 12 universal laws, but those seven Hermetic principles, things they understand their level of consciousness. I mean, we're like little kids compared to them back then.
Right. Yeah, I always think about some of like the occult, like schools of thought out there, and even the information that's out there about some of the occult, like ancient teachings. Like there's one I came across. I don't know. I consume so much stuff sometimes. I'm just like I get overloaded.
Yeah.
I don't know where to pull from. But there's a I don't know. There's this YouTuber that I was watching, and he was explaining, or they were explaining, how Jesus was actually, like he learned, I forget, but he learned like alchemy, and he learned like um, just all these different things that kind of made him into like the kind of super being that we were told he was, and it made me think like, why isn't that information out there so much, you know what I mean? And it just makes me like go to this place that you know makes me want to search for that kind of information, you know what I mean? And so the Kybalion, you said there was seven laws in that.
Yep, seven laws. And like I said, I mean, it was dated to 10,000 years ago. I mean, Egypt. If you look at modern day Christianity, people don't realize that everything came from Egypt. Look at before the Greeks colonized, it was called Kem. Sorry, Kem was like the root. We look at Horus and Isis and Osiris and Ra. Like this was the foundation of most religions, and they just basically pulled and told this same story with their own little perspective and their own little twist and their own avatar characters. But when you study that stuff and understand the ancient mystery schools of Egypt, oh my gosh, you'll see it's like, oh, okay, now this makes sense a little bit more. Like people don't even realize the Bible was written the same way these initiates would learn in these ancient mystery schools of 7 levels of interpretation. We only, though, get taught the theogenic interpretation. So we really think it was talking about this man who was put up on a cross, and it's like we completely missed it, which then only it actually creates division. It ends up creating division in this world. Yeah,
I agree with that. I there's things about the Christian religion that I didn't grow up Christian, but I mean, I was a part of the religion for a while, but now I'm in this space where I guess you could consider it like Gnostic, where I believe there is a God, and I call God universe, and I think it's all source, same thing. But I believe that there were things that the Bible talked about that really showed us, like it was saying something, but underneath it, it was trying to say something else. And I think that's even looking at Jesus' life.
For sure.
He was, I think he was an example of the potential of what we can become as humans. And so, yeah, it's super, super interesting. I want to continue on that vein. I think I saw some of your books. I don't know. I think I might have pulled it from your website, or maybe on your TikTok. I saw that you read some Neville Goddard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he is one. I think he was around in the the 1900s. What drew you to him, and like what were some of the what was something that you took away from his teachings? Hello?
Yep, there you are. Yeah, sorry. You went
It's
out
all
for a little
good.
bit.
Did you catch my question?
I said Neville Goddard is the last thing I
Okay, yeah.
heard.
Yeah, I was just asking, what did you pull from, his books, his teachings, and even his lectures? Like, what are some of the things that, some big takeaways?
Yeah, Neville was. I enjoyed his stuff because he understood that the Bible was a book of. It was more figurative and a psychological teaching than it was a literal teaching. As with every sacred book, every religion has a sacred book. We have the Quran, we have the Bhagavad Gita, we have the Bible. Not sacred in the sense of holy, but sacred. They would have still been relevant no matter what age you were in. So this is why I say like all of these sacred books were sacred because they were timeless. So Neville Goddard did an amazing job of basically showing that like the Bible of what it was really talking about, how the Christ within you was your imagination, because this was the root, this was the seat, this was the son of the Father. You have been gifted with this ability to use this thing that source creator God is using the same thing to create this universe. So he was, I mean, my favorite book is The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard.
Mm-hmm. When we got cut off there, but I believe we left off. We were talking about Neville Goddard, and you were talking about his book, The Power of Awareness.
Yeah, I mean, that book is, it's funny because I don't know, it was so, by the time I read it, I mean, I read it probably about 4 months ago. By the time I read it, I had understood everything. Like, it wasn't anything like new, but it was the way he said things. It was like, man, like he almost simplified things so much that it had this profound effect that it was like, holy crap, I knew this, but I didn't even think about it like this. So I'm a huge fan of his work of really taking the Bible and showing that it was not just exclusive to someone who was a quote unquote Christian. It applied to every human being on this planet.
Yeah, that's what drew me to his work too. It almost kind of gave me the green light to like, hey, like you can become this not superhuman, but you can create your reality. You can create the reality that you ideally would like to experience. And I think, when you break it down, everybody wants the same thing. We all want to enjoy life. We all want to, enjoy the beautiful things of life, and we all want to experience love and joy and peace. We all want to experience that. So I think, I think that's beautiful how he breaks it down, and he kind of gives us those tools to empower ourselves.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we can go down the list. You got Neville Goddard, we got Wayne Dwyer, we got Ram Dass. All of these spiritual teachers, man, I feel like, I don't know if you ever heard of Reverend Ike.
No.
Check out Reverend Ike on YouTube. He was, you want to talk about somebody who was before his time. Man, he was amazing talking about. He was doing sermons talking about how when you pray, you're really just trying to get something into your subconscious mind, because this is what impacts the field that you lit, like, way before his time. Yeah, he was good, man. Sorry.
It's all good.
There we go.
Yeah, that's super. I think it's super powerful to know information, to know that it can allow people to shift their minds and change their paradigms, if you will. Why do you think people? Not people, but why do you think we as humans we could be so married to our ideas and our beliefs? So why is that so hard for us to break? Like as a Christian, I remember, like, if I ever heard information like this, they kind of taught us to kind of steer away from it instead of exploring it.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to break this down in layman's terms. There's something called the ego, right? So the ego is basically the fragmented part of your mind. And here's what the ego does. Around the age of 1 or 2, it develops these worldly physical identities. So we'll say that I am black, or I am white, or I am a Republican or a Democrat. And here's what it does. The reason why it does this is because think of it like this. It knows that it's a finite thing competing against something that's infinite. So the spirit, consciousness, there are no boundaries, there are no limits. It is not of this world. The ego, though, attaches itself to everything in the world. So now for the rest of its life, it's looking to prove that it's enough. So it proves that it's enough by attaching itself to money, to material things, to religion, to politics. And what it does is, because it's not enough, it's not worthy enough, it's looking to always deem itself as enough. It lives in duality by creating separation, by being above or below someone. So with religion, I tell people all the time, religion is the most egoic thing in this world. Religion and politics, those are what create the most separation within mankind. When you understand that the Bible was personifying the ego through this thing called Hasatan, or also known as Satan, which is Hebrew for the deceiver, this is what deceives us into thinking that we were these physical vessels. The ego is, because the ego has developed attachment to everything in the physical world. So I say this because the reason why religion it's so rigid, it was because that's what gave the ego identity. So it needs to hold on to it, because the moment that it's taking it away, it processes it as death. That was what I was. That's what I am. And then once that's gone, it's like, oh no, what? So what I started doing back in 2020, I just started asking questions, and then all of these walls start crumbling and falling down. And I tell people all the time, they're like, well, what are you, a Christian? I'm like, I would never limit myself. Never. I would never, because when you say that you're part of a religion, and there's nothing wrong with that, you're limiting yourself to all of the teachings that you could maybe use to help you become a better person from all the other religions. I pulled stuff from Hinduism, Buddhism. I did for 36 years. I was like, oh, I'm a Christian. This is what I am. And nope, I don't want to hear anything. And I'm like, man, I missed out on the opportunity to grow and develop.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what you said, how religion and politics are some of the most divisive, things you can attach yourself to. And it's sad. It's sad to see, like, even here in the United States, you have politics that divides. I think even this day and age with social media, it's allowed us to amplify, division And even with religion as well, it's at the end of the day, it's kind of, very prideful behavior, you know what I mean? And as you read in Power versus Force, you can see that pride is one of those levels where you can operate from a level of power, but there's something above that, and I forget what it was. I have to look at the scale of consciousness again. But yeah, man, that's so true. It's very. I can see why people want to attach to like their ideas and beliefs because it's safe. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I feel like I always want to ask people, like what's going to happen if you explore that, or what's going to happen when you start to question things, like what's going to happen, you know, like because then it gets them to start thinking like, oh well, I think people are afraid of going to hell, you know what I mean? But then that in of itself is fear, you know what I mean? And you can't live life operating in fear. And so um, what is because I think the I can see from like taking a bird's eye view of the United States, I can see that a lot of fear mongering is kind of out there now.
Sure.
Um, what are some things that people can do, from your opinion? In your opinion, yeah, what are some things people can do to guard themselves so they aren't influenced by fear?
Yeah, fear can only exist um, when you're unaware of the thing that you're afraid of.
Mm.
So if you can't be I'm trying to think how to say this. If you're aware of what it is, you cannot be afraid of it.
Hmm.
So I always say if you're afraid of something, ask your ego why. Why are you afraid of this, Derick? What are you afraid of right now? What are you so worried about, Derick? And I
Hmm.
constantly, my wife thinks I'm crazy. I speak to my person in third person. I speak to my human in third person. The reason why I do this is so I create separation from the
Mm.
ego. So now I'm observing the ego instead of the ego tricking me and making me think that I am it.
Hmm.
So people who live in fear, I always tell them, number one, you have to be aware that you are in fear. Okay. Okay. How do you feel? Okay. So pay attention to your emotions. Number two, asking yourself this question: why are you afraid? What are you really afraid of? And be ruthlessly honest with yourself. And then once you're honest with yourself, ask that the ladder of whys, right? Ask why again and ask why again. And then you'll eventually get to the root of it and you'll see that it was actually nothing. It was just a figment of your imagination that the ego had hijacked to create this state of suffering so it could exist.
Right, right. And you might have touched on this already, but I learned that the ego, what it does, it tries to protect us and keep us safe. And so
Right.
I like how you said kind of separate yourself, because at the end of the day, I'm really not Matthew, you're really not Derek, you're just the observation of that, right? And so when you remove yourself and you see yourself from that point of view, it allows you to kind of look at things from, a kind of a bigger point of view, so that you can see like, oh, I think of when we're kids, we're afraid of the dark, right? Why are we afraid of the dark? Well, you hear about monsters, you hear about ghosts, you hear about all those things. But as you get older, you're not, especially in your own house, you're not really afraid of the dark, because
Right.
you know your house well enough to know like, oh, that's just you're just very familiar. You become very familiar with your house, and so I love that. I love how you kind of broke that down and kind of explained it to us in a way that I think a lot of people can understand. Um, as we wrap up here in a little bit, I just want to ask you some final questions.
Yeah.
I think on one of your TikToks, you had something titled "How to Have Joyful Relationships." And if
Yeah.
there's one thing I did learn, well, I think it's a kind of a universal principle, but the power of relationships. How important is it to really be conscious of your relationships, like who you surround yourself with?
Oh my gosh, it's everything. It's everything. I guess I could talk about on a metaphysical level that your human energy field is determined by the surrounding energy field around you. They influence you, but then even on at an energetic level, like you will resonate at the same frequency as those things that are around you if they have a big enough influence. So if I'm hanging around people that have a lower vibration, it's inevitable that I will eventually succumb to it. So I'm so intentional and so deliberate with conversations that I have, things I'm a part of, what music I listen to, what food I eat, because I see everything in terms of like almost like radio stations. I look at everything in terms of a frequency. I have to be aware of where I'm at, and then I ask myself, is this above or below me? And if it is above or below me, how much below is that frequency and how much above it than me is it? So I tell people all the time, like you're going to naturally resonate at the same frequency as the company around you. So ask yourself, is this the frequency that I want to resonate at when you're dealing with relationships?
And for those people who find themselves maybe in relationships that, they know and they're aware that, they may not resonate the vibration that they ideally would like to be at, how can people, because I don't think you should just cut people off, you know what I mean?
No, sure.
But how do you navigate that? Like, what do you do when you find yourself like, oh, like I really don't want to be around or keep this company? Like, I'm trying to be around people that are going to uplift me or resonate at a high frequency or vibration. How do
Yeah.
people like handle that?
Yeah, actually had a client who she's in a relationship and she's resonating at a higher frequency than her counterpart. And it's like, do I stay with them? Do I leave? Well, you have to ask yourself, number one, are you willing to be the front runner? Meaning, are you willing to hold your frequency and say, you know what, I'm not coming down. So if you can't come up, then you need to figure out some things. So she inevitably started doing that. And this is what we worked on, of her setting energetic boundaries and not allowing his behavior. Number one, you're going to talk to me with respect. You're going to treat me with respect. You're going to do all of these things at this frequency that I resonate at. And we'll see if he can come up. And, he ended up doing it. But this is what I mean by being a front runner, is by her holding her frequency. This is what pulled him up. And every relationship has one. The question is, though, are you willing to, and are you capable of not succumbing to the lower frequencies and getting down in the mud with them and saying, no, absolutely not. I will not partake in this behavior.
I love that. I love that. I think sometimes, I think the opportunity will always come up in any kind of relationship where you can either be pulled down or you can stand your ground. You know what I mean? And so I think the universe, see, when you said that, it kind of, the thought popped in my head, like, I believe the universe does that. So it really tests us to see, okay, how strong you are. You know what I mean? And it kind of, not as a means to like bring you down, but like more like, okay, you got some work to do. Let's work on this. You know what I mean?
That's it. Yes. So, no, yeah,
Love
that's where the universe, we're just here to learn. That's really it.
I love that. I believe that as well. Couple last questions. Who are some of your biggest influences?
For sure, my mother. Me and my mom have conversations. We usually talk 2 or 3 times a week, and by far, the stuff that she was telling me when I was young. I look back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, like she was my guru. She was my teacher. Like, and I
Okay.
didn't even know it. She didn't know it. And now, like, she listens to my podcast and she was like, I heard you say this, and this was really, and it was like, dang, Ma, like you get it. Like I think back, like she was always telling me stuff, maybe from a religious context, but
Hmm.
she was like, she was breaking stuff down to me that was going over my head, but I always see that she was planting seeds. So for sure, my mom, my father too. He's definitely had a huge influence in my life. Just
Hmm.
teaching me work ethic and to work hard. And um, but yeah, no, those two for sure have been the most influential in my life.
Awesome. And what's your definition of success?
My definition of success is taking what cannot be seen and making it seen. So
Taking.
taking this thought, this imagination, this seed that's inside of my mind, and then bringing this to a physical reality. It could be, my actual body. It could be a business. It could be this love that I have in my heart, and I express this towards you or anyone else. Taking what's unseen and then making it seen, to me, is the definition of being successful. And we do this thousands of times throughout the day. So everybody is successful. Everybody is.
I love that. That's such a very unique answer. I've never heard that before. I've never heard anyone say that. Taking your definition of success is taking what's not seen and making it seen, and basically manifesting, right?
Yeah, creating. Yeah, this is the epitome. This is the essence of being a human being, is to bring the formless into form. So if you can do this, and we're not if, we all do this, but doing this, to me, that's what's being successful. It could be you making dinner tonight. You had that idea that popped in your head this morning, and now here you are. You have made that thing literally a physical reality. Success.
I love it. I love it. And then Derick, I asked this question to everybody at the end of my podcast. The last question is, what is the purpose of life in your own terms?
I think the meaning of
if
life,
there is
the purpose
one.
of, yeah, I truly think it was to just enjoy and learn and grow in this experience. That was it. It's nothing like, there was no destination. There was no like, it's just an ongoing journey in this lifetime or the next, it's just to continue to grow and better understand yourself, because this is how the universe better understands itself, through you. You're like its outfit. I'm an outfit. It's just like when we put on a new shirt or put on like, we want to see what it's like. It just wants to see what it's like wearing you. So
I love that.
I think that's really it. This was about 6 weeks ago, I realized this. Like, this is all there is to life. We're just here to play. We're just here to enjoy it. That's it. And through every experience, because through each experience, you learn a little bit more about yourself. So it learns a little bit more about itself as well. And that's it. This is the only reason why we're here, is because it wanted to experience itself from a new perspective.
Beautiful. Love that. Well, thank you, Derick. Appreciate that. And then before we let you go here, what are you working on, and how can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on all social media platforms. I'm at DG Mindset. You can go to my website, dgmindset.com. I got an app, DG Mindset, that's found in the Apple iOS store. You can download that now. I have courses within that to help you to get on your road of self-mastery, to help people get out of their own way and understand what they truly are. So I actually have a wealth mindset manifestation course coming out here in July that I think are going to help a lot of people to start to cultivate an abundant mindset so they can create whatever they desire.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Well, I love the conversation that we had, and I think it'll add value to people, to whoever listens to it as well. Thank you again, man. Appreciate it so much. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem, Matthew. Thanks for having me on, and all the best, man. If any way I can help you, please don't hesitate to ask.
Absolutely.